Okay. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call to order the board meeting of October, 18th, 2022, a work session. Can everyone please rise and say this Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I've been informed we have some special guests, many special guests. So I'm going to hand things over to Dr. Chan.
So thank you very much. Welcome. Tonight, I know things look very different. We've got a work session planned for tonight. But before we have a work session, I've invited some very special guests to join us tonight. I don't know if everyone is aware, but this is Board Member Appreciation Week. So in honor of that, we have invited our high school chorus to come and to share a song with the board. Everything that we do is for our students who are with us tonight. So yeah, if anyone on this side wants to go to the other side and watch, you're more than welcome to do that. I know, all of us as professional educators came to this as much as a mission as it is a vocation and a career. And I know for board members, the time that you give is invaluable, and your service to the community and to the district is something that is valued and has far reach. So tonight, we wanted you to see where your reach is extending. So thank you, Mrs. Abeshouse. Thank you to the chorus. And as soon as they're ready, I'm going to let them do their thing tonight.
Thanks. Thank you, everybody, for having us this evening. We're bringing you Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah.
Oh my gosh. Those guys like songs all the time.
I heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do ya? It goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, the major lift, the baffled king composing hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. You say I took the name in vain, though I don't even know the name. But if I did, well, really, what's it to ya? There's a blaze of light in every word. It doesn't matter what you've heard, the holy or the broken. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. I did my best, it wasn't much. I couldn't feel, so I tried to touch. I told the truth, I didn't come to fool ya. And even though it all went wrong, I'll stand before the Lord of song with nothing on my tongue but hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Thank you all so much. That was excellent.
That song gets me every time. It gets me every time. Which one is your daughter?
We've changed the tone for our work session tonight, I think.
Didn't want them to stop. Nice little concert. Gosh, it's so hot in here.
Do you have a musical number, Mr. Sabalos?
A little tap dance, maybe?
I bet you do play the piano, don't you?
I don't. I can sing I like that.
What would be your song?
What do you like?
I don't know. I want to know. Like, you got a mic. What's the song? You got a karaoke. I know you have a karaoke song or something.
I have a bunch though. So
Okay.
I do everything. I can do Anthony's song.
Can we save that for next board meeting?
I can.
Start every board meeting.
We can set that up, and here we have the mics and all that stuff, and there's stuff on YouTube that can set it up, so.
So thank you. I hope that was a nice little surprise.
That was great.
Always good to be reminded up close and personal why we do what we do. I also, for the board tonight, just a couple other pieces. I've got a certificate for each of you from the school boards, New York State School Boards Association. So I'll pass those down your direction. And one more thing I wanted to do, and Will is not here, so I'll make sure he gets that, is to read a proclamation that Governor Hochul has issued for today as the final piece of recognizing the service and hard work that you as board members do for us. So it's very tiny. Proclamation. Whereas each year, School Board Recognition Week is observed by more than 700 school boards in school districts throughout New York State, and whereas our school's public education system is designed to meet the educational needs of all children and to empower them to become informed, productive contributors to society in an ever-changing world, and whereas we continue to come back from the COVID-19 pandemic, school boards have worked with school administrators and educators to help them navigate students' full return to the classroom within a learning environment that is safe, healthy, and ensures optimum opportunities for intellectual and personal growth. Whereas members of local school boards are dedicated to children, learning, and community, and devote many hours of service to elementary and secondary public education as they continually strive for improvement, excellence, and progress in education, recognizing that all children can be successful learners. And whereas local school board members are strong advocates for public education and are responsible for communicating the needs of the school district to the public and the public's expectations to the district by working closely with parents, educational professionals, and other community members. And whereas the members of New York State's local school boards respond to the educational needs of the communities they serve and help ensure the solid foundation of our school system. In doing so, these leaders help strengthen our state's education system and improve future prospects for our children. And whereas during October 17th through 21 in 2022, special activities and programs will be held in communities across New York State in observance of School Board Recognition Week. And it is fitting to join in acknowledging the commitment and contributions of members of local school boards. Now, therefore, Kathy Hochul, Governor of the State of New York, does hereby proclaim October 17th through 21st, 2022 as School Board Recognition Week. It is in the Empire State. And then it's signed by Governor. So again, thank you for your work. Thank you for all you do, your time, your commitment, and your clear focus on setting a direction for the students of the Pelham Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and I'm very excited now to transition to the main event of tonight, although students really were the main event. But sorry, John and Alicia, your second fiddle to the high school chorus, but always. No, really exciting and so appreciative tonight to have our Director of Technologies, John Sabalos, and our instructional specialist, Alicia Del Mastro here, leading a wonderful team of administrators and teachers that have been working diligently over the past month or two to prepare a work session for us tonight on digital fluency and literacy. So I am thrilled to have them here. I thank them for their work. Thank you to the administrators who are here tonight after a long day, teachers who are here tonight after a long day, and all of whom will be right back here tomorrow morning. We thank you in advance for your expertise, your time, your planning, your preparation, and for the wisdom that you're going to share with us tonight. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John, and you'll invite folks up as the appropriate time, and
Sure.
let you kick
Well,
things off.
I want to thank the Board of Education for allowing this work session for this evening. It's something I haven't done in a while in person like this, so it's nice to be in this kind of format. If you were here earlier, I want to thank the middle school teachers, Brian Battersby, Sarah Williamson, and Lauren Rosenberg for showing some of their work as well for the parents that were here in attendance prior to the work session.
Thank you.
So for tonight, we have our work session on technology. We're going to here's an overview for tonight of everything we're going to cover. I'm going to give a quick overview of technology in Pelham, our alignment within the strategic plan and inquiry process. We're going to talk about the New York State Computer Science and Digital Fluency Standards. We're going to talk about what we're doing now, and then we're going to go into why teach digital citizenship. It's going to really circle back on the stuff that we're doing as an administrative leadership team with Simon Sinek, start with why. You're going to see some of that as we get into it. But I always like to start every presentation I have with a quote. If you take a look at that, creativity is where we start to think differently, and innovation is where creativity comes to life. I just want you to keep that in mind as the work that we're doing here within Pelham, especially within the technology department, and how we're trying to integrate across the entire strategic plan. You're going to see a lot of how that comes out. So to start, and this is the last time I actually did a presentation on this, if you heard at the parent session, was on March 4th of 2020, prior to COVID, when we were talking about screen time. And this is a great way to just start. If you take a look in 1998, don't get in strangers' cars and don't meet people from the internet. And then in 2016, we're literally summoning strangers from the internet and to get in their car. It's just something, it's something for you to think about, and that's how fast everything is changing for us. The one thing I want you to think about while we laugh at this quote is not just how big technology is, it's becoming more integrated, and I don't want everyone to start thinking of it as a standalone, because it's important that we start to take that integrated approach to everything that we're starting to do. Even if you look at your board meetings, even outside of just this one tonight, everything is fully connected and it's powered by technology. And I just want you to begin to have that lens as we start to talk about digital citizenship for this evening. I just want to go over the quick profile. This is something that the board has already seen. I do this every year for the budget presentation, so that way you have an idea of how big of a network that we're supporting. One of the big changes for this year is obviously going to be the new admin building that we just opened up over, I think that was at the end of last year. So that adds another physical location. One of the big projects that we just finished for last year, with assistance from the business office and facilities, was getting our 1 gig redundant backup line for the internet. So we've actually had to utilize that twice throughout the school year last year. So what happens is our main internet line coming from BOCES over in Harrison goes into our high school. If that line ever gets cut and something happens, we actually have a backup fully 1 gig redundant line that goes into Hutchinson and powers up the entire district as well. It doesn't help when the power goes out, but when that specific internet line goes out, that we're able to still fully run as a district. We backed that up to Rockland BOCES because it sits on a completely different power grid. So that way we're just running and we're not reliant on what's happening here in Westchester. So that's one of the big projects that we were able to complete. As you start to get granular into the classroom and the buildings, we all know that there's interactive displays in every single classroom. We have IPEVO document cameras that are at the front. These were also serving as web cameras, but their true purpose was to actually be able to take artifacts and display them underneath here so you can interact with them on the display. All staff, K through 12, has a dedicated mobile device, whether that's a laptop or a Chromebook. Everybody has access to one. In the 6 through 12, we have a true one-to-one program where students are bringing devices to and from school every day. They need to charge their devices at home. In the K through 5, we have dedicated classroom sets where every classroom has a set of Chromebooks, and every student has the ability to access one should they need to. We have 5 iPads that are available for each K through 1 classroom, and we have an expansive suite of instructional technology programs. BrainPop, ClassLink, we're a Google Suite for Education district, but we have a whole list of those that we'll be able to cover in the parent handbook when we get to show that as well. So as we take a deeper dive into Pelham technology, one of the things that we had to do in May of this year was we had to submit a renewed technology plan that was done. That was our first look at it since probably 2018. New York State asks districts to do this every 3 to 4 years. We brought this to the Authentic Learning Committee to approve 3 overarching goals. And if you take a look at goals of curriculum and instruction, digital citizenship and fluency, and data privacy and security, you'll see that those are each articulated. And I'm going to take a little bit of a deep dive, but we wanted to focus for tonight on our digital citizenship and digital fluency. When we look at curriculum and instruction, there's 4 action steps that we're looking at: evaluation, curriculum, learning spaces, and professional development. I think all 4 of those go hand in hand and are interwoven with each other. Looking at everything from applications and software that we're using within the district, a review of curriculum and finding ways that we can fully integrate within those approaches, not looking at the standalone approach. Looking to innovate and evaluate our innovative learning spaces. If you take a look at the work that Dr. Garcia started, along with the PEF, with that grant, a lot of that work in our innovative learning spaces started years ago prior to COVID. And if we didn't do a lot of that work, we wouldn't be where we are now with the success we're having at Hutch with all of those learning spaces, our libraries that have been fully redone. I feel like that's an area that we should continue to grow and expand on, and looking at the professional development, not just for our teachers, but for our administrators as well, that help reflect the needs and changes within technology. And you're going to also notice the anticipated date of completions on those as well. More specifically within digital citizenship and fluency, you're going to notice that those are both substandards within a larger standard according to New York State. One of the things that we've actually been proactive upon was we actually tried to formulate some of these on our own a couple of years ago, which was really crazy. We took a combination of Be Internet Awesome, common sense, and just some practical experiences that we had, and we tried to establish them. But when New York State came out with a timeline that we're going to show, it actually did a lot of the work for us, which is nice. You're going to notice that one of the things that we did, that we had an anticipated date of completion for December 24, is a community partnership. If you take a look at the activities that we had from last week going into this week with Digital Citizenship Week and the partnership we had with Pelham Together, the PTA councils, I know we're going to be doing a screenager showing this Thursday. We had the parent event just earlier, and we had the event at the Meridian building that was last week. And I know there was also another webinar that was given the week prior. Next week is the Disconnect to Reconnect event throughout the restaurants. I got that right. I messed that up in the first meeting, but I'm glad I got that right. But that community partnership, I think, is really big, and I don't want it to just be a one-off. I think it should be a continual partnership that we continue with in the district year over year. And again, working on the professional development piece, I know Alicia has been really hard at work with that stuff, and she'll be able to talk about that a lot more in detail. The last one, and while it's a standalone, it is the core for everything that we do in terms of our operations, because this isn't just for students, this is for just how we operate in terms of facilities management and in terms of just the entire operation of the plant, is when we look at data privacy and security, making sure that we're budgeting appropriately, that our staff is getting the proper professional development, our data privacy, and that we're doing all of the right things around all of that in terms of penetration testing, abiding by Ed Law 2D, and the NIST cybersecurity framework. So you saw the Pelham technology goals. We're going to talk about our alignment within the strategic plan and the inquiry cycle. Our integrated approach, as we try to utilize the Pelham inquiry cycle as much as we can, it helps provide those authentic learning experiences for all children, right? So you heard me talk about that integrated approach, and I keep talking about that because I think it's very important for what we do. With technology growing and expanding, I really truly believe that this should be an integrated approach to what we do. There are areas where I think it should be a standalone, and it should be taught as a standalone, especially when you get heavy into computer sciences and coding. But if we take a look at even within our everyday jobs, I'm trying to mimic what we're expecting our children to do in real life situations when they leave here. In a 21st century global economy where everything we're doing is interconnected, we have to find an approach to that. And the other thing at the same time is when you look at the whole child, right, where there's a lot of SEL, we like to talk about creation versus consumption. And I think that's a very important thing for us to keep in mind as well, because we lost the battle with the screen time. The pandemic really made us super connected to that. But I think when you look at what are we doing on the screen, and we have that discussion around creation versus consumption and what we're trying to do, I think there's a balance where we can really be balanced in terms of what we're trying to do with all of our teaching and learning. When New York State came out with the computer science and digital fluency standards, I apologize for the abbreviation because that's a lot to type for heading, right? So I use CSDF and I apologize for that, but the vision for them when they came out with this, and the board was formulated in 2018, 2019, and it came out to us in the fall of 21, was that they want every student will know how to live productively and safely in a technology-dominated world. When you hear me talk about our budget process every year, I'm always talking about an ever-changing global economy. They're very hand in hand with each other, and they circle back all the time with what we're doing with authentic learning and with our inquiry cycle. We try to what they're trying to do is represent essential knowledge and skills in computer science and digital fluency. They want success in college, careers, and citizenship. And if you take a look at some of the board goals for this year, I think that falls fully in line with that as well. And a requirement of medium to high level technology skills in all occupations. All of those occupations aren't just standalone in tech, they're all in a fully integrated approach. I'm going to show this. This is a 2-minute video. It's an overview of the computer science and digital fluency standards. I think it gives a good background for the board and for the administration to actually see why it's important that we're doing this stuff. Don't mind the accent. It was made by someone, it's an upstate accent, so when you hear some of it, it's interesting.
Be careful there, John.
But yeah, you'll get it, right?
Our world is constantly changing,
Oh, yeah, it is.
and it's technology that's driving that change, transforming every aspect of our lives, disrupting industries, and reshaping the way we work, learn, and communicate. And in the future, technology will have an even larger impact on the types of occupations for our students. It's been estimated that 65% of children entering primary school today will end up working new jobs that currently don't yet exist. Many of these jobs in technology and computer science will offer significantly higher than average pay. And even if students don't pursue a job in these fields, one thing is clear. The number of jobs that require competent technology skills are growing. And the number of jobs requiring no technology skill are shrinking. It's indisputable that technology plays a significant role in our modern society and will continue to do so in the future. But with this impact and reliance on technology comes both negative and positive effects. Issues like ethics, safety, citizenship, and equity, just to name a few. It's not enough to simply provide the access for students to lead productive and successful lives. It's vital that they know how to use and understand digital technologies. For this reason, the New York State Computer Science and Digital Fluency Standards were designed. These standards were authored by a statewide group of experts on computer science and educational technology with representation from all New York State regions, community types, and stakeholder groups. The standards are comprised of 5 concept areas and are expected to be fully implemented by September 2024. They were designed to be developmentally appropriate for all students, ranging from early elementary to secondary. Some of the skills include understanding the essential features of digital technologies, why and how they work, how to create and communicate, and how to be safe when using them. The end goal is to prepare students at all grade levels to make a positive global impact by demonstrating and understanding each of the 5 concept areas. As educators, we must prepare all students to live and work in our dynamic, technology-driven 21st century world. The New York State Standards for Computer Science and Digital Fluency are simply the first step.
So again, those 5 concept areas are impacts of computing, computational thinking, networks and system design, cybersecurity, and digital literacy. In Pelham, we're currently covering many of these standards already. This year, we're performing a gap analysis with all teachers. And they mentioned a little bit of this in the video, but the timeline for the rollout of full implementation started back in December 2020 through August 2021 with awareness building. And then now we're in step 2, where we started in September 2021 through August 2023 with capacity building. And this is where we are right now, where we're focusing on curriculum development, resource acquisition, and professional development. Next up in September 2023 is year 1 of implementation, and then full implementation in September 2024.
Sure. So our focus for tonight, while we gave a big overview, as you can see, we're going down, 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 and down. We're going to be talking about digital citizenship for this evening because it goes with the National Digital Citizenship Week. If you take a look at digital citizenship, though, it's a smaller part of the standard called digital literacy, which encompasses both digital use, which is being able to use technology as an everyday part of your life, being able to collaborate and communicate with others, and digital citizenship, which focuses on empowering learners to use online resources, applications, and spaces. And it gives you a blend of how to utilize different online sources of information. So even though that's our focus for tonight, the terms get thrown around very differently, but you could all tell that they're all part of a larger standard called digital literacy.
So just as John was just mentioning, digital literacy, the concept area, then there's the sub-concept areas. This is a sample of the standards, and this is exactly what the teachers are analyzing right now in PD. And you'll see here, so the sub-concept digital use, you'll see it's spread out K-12, and then digital citizenship. Again, the idea is that these 2 sub-concept areas are under that larger umbrella of digital literacy. So as John mentioned, this week is Digital Citizenship Week. So what are we doing now in Pelham? In the elementary schools, K-5, students are participating in all different types of choice boards that I've sent out to teachers that are supplemental activities. And then every K-5 student is participating in 2 different read-alouds with Mrs. Sullivan, our library media specialist for the elementary schools. And then at the secondary level, all of these different areas are being covered 6 through 12, mixed in different grade levels. Every 6th grader is working on these lessons. Some of these, again, it's like the first 3 or 4, with Miss Rosenberg, our middle school library and media specialist. They're also working with Miss Williamson in 7th grade in the technology courses and Mr. Battersby in 8th grade. At the high school level, the high school will be holding a week of student-led initiatives and activities to promote positivity, kindness, and digital citizenship. These are some of them. So we have an initiative where it's called Positive Post-its with messages of empowerment and encouragement. Unity Week activities, which are designed to promote positive social media usage and conversation regarding the pros and cons of social media. Next, we have activities to promote kindness and encourage students to be upstanders online. And also in the daily announcements, there's strategies being told to show respect and kindness toward fellow students and staff, both in person and online. So what we have here is another choice board that was sent out to all of the faculty K-12, and these are some different activities to supplement in the classroom as teachers see fit. So I want to just give you a couple examples here. So I keep mentioning a choice board. So this is an example for a choice board for grades K-5, and the students can navigate through the choice board, kind of learning on their own, clicking through different types of activities. There's songs, there's read-alouds, and this kind of goes back into all of the applications that we have. You're seeing some of them here. So on here, we actually have Mayan, we have BrainPop, we have coding, we have a Google Slides presentation, we have PebbleGo, we have a Google Doc, so it kind of brings all of the applications that we have in Pelham into one activity. And that's just one example. So again, that's for grades 4 and 5. Let's take a look at a middle school activity. This wasn't loading before, let's see if it does. Okay, so this is called an Ed Puzzle activity, and the idea is that the students would watch a video. The topic here is the digital footprint, so it'll teach them what the digital footprint is, and then it actually stops them as they're watching the video to quiz them. Again, just another supplemental activity for some of our students. That was at the middle school level. And for our high school students, this is just a sample. So this one is called a social media test drive. And it's a simulator that kind of brings them through first some terms that they should know if they're actively using social media, one of them being maybe something like a privacy policy or things that pop up. And then it actually brings them through real life scenarios that they may see on their own devices and say, what would you do? What would you do? And it still brings them through that whole activity there. So that's the K-12 choice board for our teachers.
So as we start for tonight, and the overarching question is, obviously, why should we be teaching digital citizenship? And if you take a look, this is Simon Sinek's golden circle of why we should be, it's asking, what is your why, right? We talked some about the how, and we talked some about the what, and I'm hoping our panel of experts around our discussion tonight can help facilitate a lot of that discussion. So if everyone wants to come join us, our panel of experts can come join us at table over
John,
here.
if you don't mind, we forgot one procedural. You all can come on up. While you're coming up, we forgot one procedural piece of appointing a clerk pro tem. So
Yes, please.
if you don't mind, we're just going to take a moment for the board to do that. Folks, please come. Please, you're welcome to come take your seat while we do that.
So I'm going to ask for a motion to appoint clerk pro tem. It'd be Alex Wolf.
Is Alex?
He's here.
Oh, yeah, he's
So
there.
moved.
Okay.
So Jessica and second. Ian, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Thank you.
Okay. So Alex, it's you. I've got the notes from the first half of the meeting. Thanks, John.
All right, so I guess before we get started, I want the panel to please introduce themselves. If you can just give us your name, where you teach, grade level, that would be great. And we'll start from my left going right. So Karen, please, if you can, I know Chris, Mike, right into the mic, please. So I'll pass that around.
Hi, I'm Karen Cirillo, and I teach fourth grade at Prospect Hill.
Hi, Sarah Williamson, Pelham Middle School, 7th grade technology.
Hi, I'm Brian Battersby. I teach 8th grade technology at the middle school.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Tom Callahan, Director of Math and Science K-12.
Hi, I'm Maria Thompson, Director of Humanities.
Hi, good evening. Mark Berkowitz, Principal of Pelham Memorial High School.
Good evening. I'm Tricia Fitzgerald, the Principal of the Hutchinson School.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Rosenberg, Library Media Specialist at Pelham Middle School.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. To get started, I guess we'll start with the first question, which is, what do we as education professionals expect students to gain or learn about digital citizenship and fluency? So I'll leave that open to anyone who wants to start that off. Sure.
In terms of what do we hope for the students to learn, one of the things that we stress in the program is just as in the outside world, there are responsibilities and expectations to be a member of a community, those responsibilities also carry over into the digital world. And we realize that they are, the students are, it feels like 24/7 on their computers, and we attempt to engage them with, at the very beginning of the year, with what they know and what they don't know. We seek out what the gaps are, and it's a range of fluency and expertise, But what we want to show them is move beyond some of the messages that we know they have heard already, and this is how I approach it at the 8th grade level, and to consider what, by being so online, what maybe are they not aware of? Topics such as the profiling, the data collection, all of this information, the monetization of what happens when they're online. And we're giving them much more of, we hope, a fluency into what is going on behind the scenes, that what you might not necessarily see when you click on the device, but that is going on 24/7.
I want to go to the opposite, to the younger end. Since I'm the 4th grade teacher, I don't think there's any younger teachers here, but ours is a more concrete, I believe, level of instruction. And Alicia was just in this week, and the kids absolutely are enamored with the choice boards, and they are looking at it as a game. But all of a sudden, as the lessons are going on that you presented, their wow moments happen and their ahas. Wow, I didn't know. And I think one of the kids had said, I didn't know how much went into being safe on the internet, and all of the initial lesson planning of that, because they've had devices in their hands at such a young age, but really thinking about what keeps you safe. And I know, and I commend the language of, this is not to scare you, but you need to know. Do not give your personal information out. Don't take a picture in front of Pelham Pizza. There is more than one Pelham in this country, but you start putting a uniform on and you're standing in front of a local restaurant, somebody's going to figure out who you are and where you live. And I thought that was amazing. And I also just want to say the choice boards. The kids think it's playing the Dance Party USA was a really good one. Because I was like, all right, let's get off that and write about what we've learned.
It is a coding activity.
It
so
is. I know, but
they're
that's
learning to code and dance.
Yes, they love that.
All right, well, let me keep that going because we heard some examples for that. How do we think this will apply in their everyday lives, right? So we heard some of the examples that Brian was doing in the middle school and how he's trying to relate that, and we heard from Karen. But how do we think this applies to the students' everyday lives?
So I'm just going to speak from a disciplinary standpoint, social studies and ELA. Our next gen standards overlap with the new computing standards. And what many people realize is that we do a lot in social studies, especially on research and analyzing evidence. But what we do while we're working on that is we are teaching students to be smart and savvy consumers of information. Most of their information comes off of the internet. We push them towards databases, which Lauren could probably speak more to. But digital literacy is about how they consume the information at their fingertips and understanding that there's bias in all information, one way or another. We, in social studies, beginning really at the middle school, and this year we're highlighting it a lot in 9th grade, looking at media literacy as part of digital literacy. So we introduce students to All Sides, which is an infographic that talks about media bias, and at the same time having students go out and research current events, keeping in mind what they've learned about bias in the media. And we talk to them about how even those media bias charts have bias. So thinking about who are the authors, when was it created, what organization created it. So the analysis of the why behind information, why was it written, and who wrote it, is integral to the social studies curriculum, and it fits perfectly with the work with digital literacy.
Yeah, and News and media literacy are a part of digital citizenship. However, it's something that we really focus on the entire year in every single grade in the middle school library. And just piggybacking on what Dr. Thompson said, it's very important for our students, not necessarily even in the school building, but in their everyday lives, to really understand the information that they're receiving online. You know, they're connected 24/7, as we've said, with an iPhone, a Chromebook. We have 24/7 news coverage. And students see this information and they really need to ask themselves, where is this coming from? It's something we do with every single research project. We focus a lot on databases and who creates them. We focus on websites and who creates the websites. And it's really up to our students to use those skills and to critically think about who's creating my information and what its purpose is.
And on my side, I'm going to go back to the first why you asked. I think, really the scariest thing for me is, parents and teachers can't be everywhere at all times. So part of the why with digital citizenship is just almost for safety and for the protection of our kids, so that they know how to behave and what to do if there are dangers that they encounter online. So that might seem like a little bit primal to begin with, but I think that's why some of these efforts are so important. So on that digital citizenship side, there's a huge safety piece to that. Going into the curriculum side a little bit, to Maria's point, information dissemination and things like that, it's very, very, we see information coming at us from the internet at lightning speed. So we have to be able to figure out what's reliable information, what's valid information, and what's not. So I think learning those skills is super important. And that's a focus on skills over content in that particular case. But the other piece is not only figuring out what kind of information you're dealing with, but it's also the overlap in our standards in math and science is not just consuming information, as John frequently says, but also using computers to produce products. So on the science side of things, there's a heavy emphasis on identifying or encountering questions and designing answers to those questions. Technology helps us to do that. If you get even further along, New York State now on the secondary level considers tech courses as math or science credit. So that's because they see that computer science is a real-life application of mathematics. So those coding courses and things like that you see on the secondary level are really math in practice. So there's a huge overlap, certainly with math and science, and these are things we want our kids to be engaging in more and more because we see more and more technology in society.
If I can just build upon Dr. Callahan and some of the comments that have been made by our colleagues. There's a synthesis moment where we're talking about helping our students to assess the validity of sources, right, and to consider before they create what they've just consumed. And I think from a school leader standpoint, in addition to the curricular moments, all the informal moments of school, where one is chatting in the informal spaces, social spaces, lunch spaces, it requires that same create and consume moment. What have I just received, consumption, before I create my response? Is there a pause to determine the validity of what I've responded, what I've just received? That can feel nuanced for our children, particularly when text messaging and other media are going by so fast. But it's really important that they're receiving it in all the different genres as a similar type of message. That's why those standards at a state level are very helpful.
Awesome. Well, piggybacking on that.
I have a quick question just for
Mr.
Battersby. You brought up like something that I hadn't really thought about, which is the kids making a connection between what they're consuming and commercialization. And do you find that they're making that connection, that there's a whole business model behind TikTok that's dependent on their eyeballs and someone's making money off of it?
Oh, well, that is very much what we've been discussing recently, and one of the themes of our lessons in social media is that when you're on social media, the app is not the product, you are the product. And every time a student clicks on a like, follows something, or retweets, or gives an approval, the data brokers, which we also teach them about, are able to charge more and more money. It allows them to target ads to those specific students and maybe eliminate others that are less desirable from an advertising standpoint. And I can tell from the discussions that I have had with the 8th grade students that they did not conceive of this before. It's just that I got the app, I'm getting it for free, and they did not realize that there is not something for nothing. And they have to be comfortable with those trade-offs. I'm giving you a lot of my information, what am I getting? And I think they realize that they're not always coming out on the winning side of that equation. Yes, very much so.
Awesome. Anyone else? All right, well, this goes hand in hand with that question about how it applies in their everyday lives. I want to know, what are the challenges our student body faces today in the digital world?
I think that we have higher expectations for our students using technology now than we have before. And so students need to really make choices and balance between work and having fun and being online, because even their homework can be online now. So where before you might have just had games online and socializing online, now they need to actively make choices when using that same device, which can be a challenge for students, plus our higher expectations of the work that they're doing online and the actual skills that they have online as well.
I think in elementary, what came to mind for me, and we also had touched on this during our lessons this week, is the bullying aspect that can come because there's no face. You know, you're not saying something to somebody directly. So if you're typing on what you put up a Jamboard and somebody's writing a silly word about somebody or thinking they're funny and there's no, identity to those words, it isn't true anymore. And they're learning that everything has a footprint and everything is being recorded forever. And they can trace anything. So I think that's a good lesson for them to learn too, that you can't hide behind the screen was the terminology I think they were using. Correct me if I'm wrong with that, Alicia.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that as well. I think one of the challenges that they face, it's not like when any of us grew up. They're recorded from the moment they're born. I think having that exposure from a young age and being able to balance out when is this appropriate and when it's not appropriate, I think is probably one of the challenges they're going to face for the rest of their lives. I think we, even as adults, have a hard time with that as well, in terms of what we're posting, not posting, when we decide to post, when we're going to post. I think that becomes a really hard thing, and I think that's probably something they're going to probably have to learn and carry for the rest of their lives. And I think that's where it's up to us as educators to really not only demonstrate that, but at least make them aware of those issues. And I don't want to say issues, but where I think that's going to be a concern for them. You see the stories that happen from people within social media, for everything from athletes losing scholarships to endorsements to everything. I think that's just a hard balance, and I think that's going to be something that's going to be there for a while. That's not going to really change because it's recorded all the time now and it doesn't go away.
Could I ask something about just talking about making good decisions when working? Because just from a parent perspective, I'm saying, okay, use the computer to do Dreambox, and then I hear Mr. Beast or some other YouTuber, 10 minutes later. So it's it's very hard to say, please I want you to use this to work on your book report or do your Dreambox or whatever it is, but then there's, everything else is just one click away, especially if you don't have a dedicated kind of lockdown device for every child at home. I don't know if anybody has any tips on that.
I'm going to respond to that briefly in an informal way, which is that I know that some of the best research has talked, and again, I think that every home physical plant is a different layout, but sometimes it does help to have students do homework in a public part of whatever one's home, apartment, house, living situation looks like. It's also helpful. Certain parents have told me that it's been helpful for them. And I'm talking at the high school level, and I don't think that most high school parents do this, but some have told me very transparently, there's a time of night where I collect the electronics so that I can try to make sure that my child gets a good night's sleep. I think that the reality of boundaries of what we post, and that very real reality is that just about anything that has ever crossed my desk from a disciplinary matter has at some point had some nexus of concern with a tool that is either in the hand or in a laptop. And that's because it is lightning quick, and the adolescent brain is not necessarily thinking about taking a pause. So I think that, quite frankly, the real world connection for me is that chorus performance was not disconnected. It was the argument that we have to help our children get off couches if they're on couches, have at least one school-based activity, which I know is a board goal that they are finding meaningful, to have this kind of connection at some point, even if it's only with one or two other people, that you feel comfortable, forgive me, I didn't ask permission, touching the shoulder, and feel the human contact of community in addition to the ways in which we foster connections safely through our online world.
And I don't think that concern for you with homework is just a technology issue. I mean, even when we send students home, and that's why I like when Mr. Burke was talked about working in a communal place. If you think about even when you used to bring things home, if it wasn't you going on Dreambox and then you hear the YouTube video going, it could have been you looking at the textbook, and then underneath you have like something you're doodling and something you're drawing. I think it's just a matter of like even just a core emphasis of just like their focus. I think it's way easier to be distracted with the technology tools that's given to you, but I don't think that core tenet of it has really changed. It's digital and it's way more accessible. And I think there's a lot of things that we have done that really doesn't help it, right? But I do think like that is a good suggestion, but I think some of that has always been there, but the technology has definitely brought a lot more of it out and has made it much easier to be distracted. So I don't.
This whole discussion, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask a question along the line of boundaries, because I love digital literacy and fluency, but I wonder, should we also be teaching digital restraint? Because several of you have said 24/7 access, it's so dominant, but when do our kids in school have a time that they're not, particularly with their mobile devices? Like, how do they learn that they can actually be without these devices? And I think we have a different policy at the middle school versus the high school. I don't know if that's still the case, but in middle school, our kids still have to park their devices, basically, right?
Yeah.
But in the high school, they have some access. Have you found that is does not result in distraction or overuse, or like I'm a fan of, it's almost like a safe space where you don't have access to your mobile devices during the day so you can focus, because you've got access to your computer screen and all that. So I'm just curious, I guess, why the difference, and do you see any issues with having access to mobile devices in the high school and not the middle school? And there it is. There's
Distraction.
Distraction. No, but it's true.
I would say that actually it was something that we studied at the high school level last year, and there was a request for a number of reasons to make sure that we have a cell phone-free classroom zone, and we do. So that's been really important. As you may know, we don't have single lunch periods the way that the middle school does. Students have lunch at different periods. Students have an open campus after grade 9, and for some of those reasons, students will have access to their device when they're not in classroom. But for classroom, we have said that students have to have the cell phone away. We've said that for study hall as well. And so there may be times where a teacher needs for a student to have, I can think, case in point, in certain art classes, it's helpful for a child to actually have a cell phone open if they're sketching, and with teacher permission, it can be allowable. But it's been very helpful this year to actually have those boundaries that you're talking about, a cell phone-free classroom and study hall environment.
I will say I'm getting far fewer texts from my high schooler this year than I was last year, so I think it's working for certain. Tommy, you were going to say something?
No, if you go ahead.
I was just going to say the point that you made, Miss Williamson, is reminding me of another thing that's changed so much. I grew up with a parent who taught internet safety way back when with AOL, like in the early days. So I've been a consumer of internet safety tips since it was like she almost invented it. One of the tips that was always shared in those days was not to let your child have a computer in their bedroom because of all the things that could happen. And I'm just reflecting on this conversation and the boundaries, but those boundaries are so blurred. Like, we have laptops now, right? Sometimes it's quieter. We have 4 kids in our house. It's quieter to do your homework in your bedroom. You know, these kids all have cell phones. That's in an essence a computer in their hand. They have, Xboxes and PlayStations, which are also essentially computers. So it's just another factor, I think, that our kids are dealing with now, that, being on the internet isn't an isolated event where you can protect them in an open environment where everybody can see what they're doing on a screen. So it's a challenge.
I think one of the things that I was going to say that kind of piggybacked on some of the points that were made is there's a difference between using technology and using technology productively. So if technology is not being used productively, I think that it is a distraction. And one of the assumptions we have, because some of us may have not grown up with as much technology as our students do, is that they're better at using technology than we are. But I can assure you, if you ask them to put data in a spreadsheet, ask them to process that data, generate graphs, and then communicate that data using the spreadsheets, it's something that they will struggle with. So they're really good with some of the social media applications of using technology. But when it comes to using programs that could, I think, help them produce things better, they're not so good at that. So I think it's a good, your question was a good segue into this. I don't think students should have cell phones if they're a distraction for them in the classroom. But if you're doing a science lab in chemistry and you're doing flame tests, and you'd like to, and part of doing a flame test in chemistry is different elements, basically, when you burn them, give off different colors of light. So if the students record videos of all those flame tests, they actually have a digital recording of what they did in class, and then they can analyze those different tests later on as they're discussing which element those colors might be connected to. So in that way, you're using technology, even it's easier to use a mobile device than it is to use a Chromebook, right? So in that way, I would say it's not a distraction because they're engaged by what they're using the technology for. If they're, trying to figure out how to get Panera delivered to them at lunchtime during, their break, then it's probably not the best use of technology. So I think that's we sometimes assume that they're way better at using technology than we are, and that might be the case with certain applications, but that's not the case with everything. So using a database, right, as one of the points that Dr. Thompson brought up earlier, like teaching them how to be, discriminating consumers in terms of the information they're processing. I think those types of things, like I would never want a situation where like the physics teachers are told not to use their phones as stopwatches when they're doing some, races in the hallway with some of their gravity cars. So I think those are the kinds of conversations that are important there.
And I think that even brings up a larger conversation. That's funny that you said with like all the data analysis and, they could do so many different things, but if they were to put that stuff into a spreadsheet and need them to make a pivot table, they're not. It's different. When we think of students now, everyone's like, oh, they're so great with the technology and this is given to them. They grew up with it. I like to always use the comparisons when you heard me talk about creation versus consumption. I like to talk about students being tech comfy versus being tech savvy. I think they're very, very different because I think they're tech comfy because they've grown up with the stuff and they're okay taking the risk. But when it comes to being tech savvy, that's where I think those gaps lay ahead. And I think that's where we can help try to bridge some of those areas and make them more tech literate. And I think that's where the schools come in to really help with some of that. And hopefully we try to do the best we can.
And just going off of that, I'm noticing that now going into some classrooms, having the standards in mind that we just talked about and some of the lessons that are being presented through common sense. There's a lesson that focuses on media balance. even just bringing up the term and talking about it, they're like, oh yeah, maybe I do use a timer, or I do this. And they're starting to think about it more, and I think it's good to bring the awareness. One of the activities in that lesson is it actually starts by saying, describe your perfect day. So they all just have to sort of think to themselves and say, okay, I'm gonna plan out my perfect day. I told them it was a Saturday, pick a day and just plan it out. And we went around the room and everyone shared, and so many of them realized that their day wasn't really focused around technology. We can use technology to help us, but it wasn't the main thing that they wanted to do. My favorite one was a student said that they wanted to sit in the rain under an umbrella eating a sandwich all day. And I was like, that sounds like a great day. And then we talked about that healthy media balance, how sometimes we may need to use technology to do our homework, to do Dreambox, to do these things that help us learn, and maybe to book our flight to wherever we want to go on our perfect day. But my point is that talking about that term and that definition brought awareness, and hopefully we'll continue with that.
Along with the media balance, we talk a lot about reflection, self-reflection, so students can take some time to actually think about their balance and how much time are they spending online, how much time are they spending offline, what specific things are they doing online versus offline, and then seeing if they need to take some time where we call unplugging and just not being on a digital device at all, and then see what works for them, what specific activity works well for them when they think that they need to unplug. So what works well for one might not work well for another. And then also taking time to think about like what we call red flag feelings, like if you're not feeling the greatest when you're online doing something, what can we change to make it, to do things differently? So that piece of reflection and self-reflection can also help with balancing out their media use and setting those boundaries.
All right, well, I mean, last question, I think this will probably take up a big chunk of our conversation, is what did we learn as a district from from COVID-19 in regards to digital citizenship and in a larger picture, technology as a whole, right? So if we think about everything that's happened from about March of 2020 up until now, what do we think we've learned in regards to digital citizenship and a larger picture tech?
I'll just start us off. I think one of the biggest things that technology did for us during the pandemic was show us how we could communicate. So we weren't allowed to be near each other, and we were communicating on a screen, and a lot of us figured out some protocols on how you took turns talking in your little boxes, and how did you jump into the conversation when you're talking in your boxes. And that, watching some videos, Alicia had some videos that we were looking at last year of teaching in a pandemic and watching how the kids reacted to seeing each other online when they couldn't go out to the park and see each other, but being able to see each other online, and watching how that piece of technology brought people together. And so I think that was a very powerful moment for everyone to see that this tool, which we use for production or we use for social media, also can become this big communication tool, whether we speak the same language, whether we're in the same state, whether we're in the same country, and also brought up the question of what protocols do we need to use when we are using that as a communication tool. So I thought that was a really big aha moment, especially at the elementary level for kids.
I also know that teachers spent a lot of time last year and this year reviewing with students academic honesty, what it means, what is paraphrasing, some of the basics with our high schoolers that, we teach them all throughout, but during, their time at home, whether it was during hybrid or when we were fully remote, it was very easy to share information between students, to test together, to create papers together. We use tools. We're very fortunate in Pelham. We have an unbelievable toolbox of technology tools to help us. We use turnitin.com in social studies at the secondary level. And, we needed to basically retrain our students this is what Turnitin, we want you, Turnitin identifies whether or not a paper or parts of a paper have been plagiarized, either from previous papers or from anything on the internet. We like to use it as an instructional tool, not as a punitive tool. We had to basically retrain students when they came back at, last year and this year, that this is how you can use Turnitin to ensure that you are paraphrasing properly, to remind yourself not to procrastinate to where you need to call a friend and ask for their paper from first semester economics, things like that. And this was the reality. It might not seem very positive, but actually, I think that we need to be aware of the time lost when it comes to the responsibility of how to use their tools when they were home, sometimes not necessarily with an adult or with anybody near them, and some of the habits they might have fallen into. So our teachers have spent time reintroducing those ideas.
Google Classroom for the younger teacher, elementary teachers like myself, that was something we never even looked at. We never used Google Classroom. Now we became so savvy with it. Everything is posted. It's time saving. It's efficient. There's an equity for everybody, whether you're somebody that couldn't write down their homework and now it's posted. You're not forgetting assignments because you forgot to write it down because you were more disorganized versus, a student that had his handbook out and was writing in his daily planner. And just the sharing amongst colleagues has been just amazing due to the pandemic. So I think there was so many positive pieces of that came out of COVID with the digital world we're in now.
To that point, I'm wondering, maybe this is a question for Ms. Sabia, but are the sixth graders in the last couple of years is the transition to middle school that much easier because they're savvy with Google Classroom and how to turn in assignments on Google Classroom?
Yes, that's definitely helped, because when we first started out.
Sorry.
When we started out, it took quite a while for our teachers to teach the students how to use Google Classroom.
Sorry. She's trying so hard to not be up here.
I'm sorry, I just need to know how to answer that.
Yes. Yes, so I think it's definitely helped our students, and we can see our sixth graders are coming in more savvy. We always had our planner, and we relied on our planner. For some students, that's still a really good way to go. But we find that it's so much easier that the fifth graders, when they're coming into sixth grade, know about Google Classroom. They know how to post their homework. They know how to get their homework. They know how to turn stuff in. Parents are more helicopter parents now. I myself have been a helicopter parent, but they're able to see what their children have missed. And so when we send out our interims, especially the sixth grade students have already told their parents what to expect, and the parents have already looked. So I think it's definitely helped.
And just going off of that, we were kind of thinking about that in the beginning of the year. So Lauren and I actually worked together to plan a sixth grade tech boot camp to ensure that we knew that every sixth grader knew exactly what Google Classroom is, how to turn in an assignment, how would you turn in an assignment if it's not posted to you. Like, we went through everything to make sure that they all knew the same thing about Google Classroom, because the reality is they are coming from 4 different schools.
I think the thing that I learned during the pandemic, there's so many lessons, but technology, we're having a really robust conversation about how technology is used in school districts and how our kids use technology. But I think the main lesson was technology has its limitations, right? So I'm still looking for the Turnitin.com for math. So I'm hoping some of our AP computer science kids can help us with that in the future. But all kidding aside, there really hasn't been a replacement for that interaction that you get with the teacher. So remote learning, while it needed to kind of fill some of the gaps during the pandemic in terms of what we were able to provide, I'm really cognizant when we look at what we're going to do with something like Dreambox. We don't want to overuse a technology so that the impression that people get is that it is a replacement for the teacher. So we don't want to be so reliant on technology that it becomes something that people think is a replacement for good teaching in the classroom. So that's something that I'm always cognizant of. We really try to use it to supplement what's going on in the classroom. A lot of times it's really great to differentiate for different learners. It's good to progress monitor to see how kids are doing, because when you have a lot of kids in the class, technology can facilitate some of that data collection and some of that progress monitoring and how we measure growth. But at the end of the day, I don't want kids on Dreambox so often that people believe that that is where they learn math from, right? So I think that's something that's really, really important and a lesson from the pandemic.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that comment as well. One of the things, and I think you saw in one of my previous presentations, is that technology will never replace good teaching. There is a huge emphasis on what teachers in our district and everywhere else that they do, but especially here, our teachers are excellent. And technology will never, ever replace that. It's just going to help them. So I think being able to give all of the tools that we can and in an appropriate manner and finding ways to use it appropriately is one of the things that I see has really changed throughout that time. When we look at the balance with digital citizenship, even when we look at the larger computer science standards as a whole as well, it's funny if you take a deep dive into some of those standards, especially within computer science, how heavy they are in math and science. They're super reliant within our math and focus and Science 21 curriculum. They're almost hand in hand with each other. So I think the way that you're looking at how technology is really integrated as a part of our teaching and learning, but not just a standalone part, has really stood out to me. And the work that our teachers do in this district, given the tools that they have and the access that we give to the community, is something that we take a lot of pride in as well. So I really think that's something that has really changed for me and something that I've learned throughout being here. And also onboarding, I think, 1,500 students in 2 weeks in Google Classroom in March of 20 was something that was pretty interesting. But that was it was all for a good purpose, and it was what was needed to be done. But I'm glad we did it, and I think moving forward we're going to be in a way better place, and I think we're going in the right direction as a district in terms of technology as a whole. Was there anyone else? I didn't want to.
And you just make me think of the standards. As we're analyzing them with the teachers, we're noticing to say, like, okay, where is this standard covered? And we're going through them, we're saying, oh, this is covered in our journalism class, or this is covered in our in our teachers' college curriculum, or this is covered in our library classes. So it's really interesting doing the analysis of the standards and seeing how much we really already do.
Hi, I have a question. Are we looking at either new technology or tools just to continue to help either teaching or anything new? Things are so innovative and changing every day.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think we need, like, the tools are always changing. So there's always going to be a different tool that does something different. I think it's a matter of what are the tools that we have now, what are the tools that we can access, and how are we integrating them into the curriculum as that changes as well. So for example, I know one of the things that we've done to incorporate within Teachers College Reading and Writing, and Alicia just did this, and this is outside of that digital citizenship part, but it's with digital fluency, is exposing students to a different tool to accomplish the same task that's being asked of them, right? So within, can you speak more to that with the podcasting piece? I think you did with Karen or something like that. It was a part of the TC part, if you don't mind.
So simply, instead of publishing a piece of writing in a Google Doc or on a piece of paper, what the students did was they were able to record themselves and then post it and share it to families that way. And they've done that in a few different ways. I worked together last year together with Ms. Cirillo in a social studies project where students were able to analyze current event articles and then take that article and bring it to life in a video that then they were able to share out. and then they built onto it from there.
And the whole thing is that teachers throughout our district are able to use different tools to do that same task, right? It doesn't have to be that explicit task. But we have programs such as WeVideo, Screencastify. There's now a screen recorder built into the Chromebook. There's a wide range of tools and that's where the digital fluency part comes out, and that's where we want students to learn to be like, okay, I have this in my toolkit. What's the tool that I can use? So I don't necessarily think we always have to be looking for the latest and greatest tool. It's when is the appropriate time to use it and how can we use it, right? And that's when we talk about, like Ian was talking about before, we talk about that creation versus consumption, right? And that it goes all hand in hand with each other. And when we look at those different authentic learning experiences, I think that all piggybacks on top of each other as well.
John, I have a pretty good example of that too, and it's not just using technology for instruction itself, but also some of the things that we look at on, an administrative side and also on the teacher's side, which is kind of more the boots on the ground aspect. Coming out of the pandemic, we were really worried in math about learning loss. So one of the technologies that we put in place was something called a forefront screener, which is a screener that, so we had never done it really before, we had piloted it. But coming out of the pandemic, we wanted to see where all the kids were K through 6 in the district in math. So we used a forefront screener, which is basically a one-on-one interview between the classroom teacher and the student, where they actually put in the responses to about 8 to 10 questions. And then the computer program basically collects that data, and we can see where there might be a conceptual issue for a place in mathematics, and it actually color codes the results for the classroom teacher. The classroom teacher can then see where some remediation might be needed for that math concept. So that forefront program, which John supported on his side of things, has really made looking at learning loss and remediating, and also something that's a part of our MTSS process, which is our multi-tiered systems of support. It's like, what do the kids need help with? So that technology can be used not only by the classroom teacher to assist with instruction or by the student to produce something, but also for us to see where kids are and to screen them. And in that particular case, that particular screener provides us with remediation strategies based on student responses. So Ms. Sabia supported it this year, and Mr. Llewellyn in the middle school. So we actually screened over 200 kids for number sense in math in the middle school. And that's something that's brand new, that we used technology as a result of what we wanted to recover from during those pandemic times. So there's a lot of examples like that where you've supported technology on that side as well.
Is there anyone else that wanted to? Okay, let me actually take this. Actually, I don't need this.
John, while you're figuring out that technology, maybe I'll add one more thing.
Please. Please.
I was thinking about what people were saying on the panel earlier about like how much is screen time and how much is just constantly on the device versus the real instruction and what came from it. So we started with these podcasts and tying literacy in or civics in, and they turned into such bigger projects that touch to what we want our students to be and who they are. One of the podcasts started with all the research on animal shelters. By the end, our entire school collected items for the Mount Vernon shelter, and we delivered them, and parents helped and other people in the community. The kids one group was Patriotic Pals, and they were all for the podcasting with the green screen. But when we were approached by Ms. Hogan in the middle school and our student government, we wrote letters for the honor flight that takes off every year, and the entire school wrote letters to veterans on this flight, and they were delivered. So those are just examples of how it might have started out with the excitement of just being on TV or recording ourselves to a much bigger project for us that was deeper than the technology piece. Okay, John, it's all yours.
Well, just to to wrap things up, and we heard a lot about digital citizenship and technology. Behind me, and I'm sorry, I'm sitting right here. I hope everyone can see that. Let me step out of the way here. If we take a look up here, so this is a part of the COSIN Driving K-12 Innovation Trends and Technology. This is actually the consortium of school networking. It's pretty much our professional group for directors of tech that's nationally. So this national advisory board has about 50 to 60 educators that are on it. I'm actually on the advisory board for this, so I get to help set some of these trends. This is going to be my third year on the board. So these were released in March of 2022. And what it does is it identifies 3 areas in terms of hurdles, accelerators, and enablers, right? So when we look at barriers, scaling innovation and inertia of education systems, attracting and retaining educators and IT professionals, digital equity. We hear those conversations not just within the education realm itself. Those are real problems for us even in the tech world. When we look at the big mega trends of accelerators, when we look at personalization, building the human capacity of leaders, SEL, we look at all of that, and that all falls in line with some of the work we're doing here. And we look at the enablers, when we look at digital collaboration environments, untethered broadband and connectivity, analytics and adaptive technologies, we spoke to all of those tonight. So when we take a look at even what COSIN is identifying as terms of innovation trends in tech, we've hit on almost every single one of those tonight. So I think we're in a very good place in Pelham in terms of technology, digital citizenship, and digital fluency. And that's what I have. I want to thank our panel of experts for joining us tonight. I don't know if the Board of Ed had any other additional questions for us that they wanted to ask, but I will open the floor for them if there was anything else. Sure.
I had one quick question about, so much is happening at a younger age, and we're probably just continually rethinking how we adapt at the high school level and how, what our pinnacle experiences are. So curious what we're thinking now about, computer science and coding and what students can accomplish once they're sophomores, juniors, seniors.
So I think I'll have to team up with John and Mark for this one. But we're really trying to, and I've seen a tremendous amount of growth because of the work of my colleagues in the high school over the last few years. But John mentioned earlier, and I don't remember if it was this session or the last session, that computer science, when we first started it, really only had, I think, 9 kids in it, and we've now grown to 2 full sections and assigned a math teacher. Because the other thing, and I'm sure Dr. Garcia remembers this too, is finding a tech teacher that could teach the courses in the high school was very, very difficult to do. So we actually attempted multiple times to find someone that could do that we felt could push the program forward, and we ran into some hurdles doing that. But we have started a data science course, which is based on a curriculum for math that makes real-world connections it's really almost entirely project-based, and all the assessments, like for example, I was reviewing some of their projects because I think they're super cool. They have to do a business model, and they have to generate graphs to back up their model, right? And so that's how they learn graphing. So they don't learn graphing in isolation. They learn it because they need it, right? So that data science class has developed just this last year, and we're super excited about that. I think Mr. Berkowitz has been in there too. We're really very happy having a second year of engineering, which is actually totally inclusive, so there's no tracking in there. It's not an honors level class. Any student can do it, and it's very, very highly differentiated, and it's based on engineering for tomorrow, where they've got lots of guest speakers, and everything's about building things, right? And it's project-based. So we've done some things there. I can speak from my own perspective. I feel like we need to continue to push in that direction. We need more options. I'd love to see an upper level, or not an upper level, but the next level of AP Computer Science in the high school. I think that is the next logical step. Now that the board saw fit to assign a person to technology in the high school, which has been super helpful, because now that's given us the ability to expand those programs. So, but the other thing that even just a shift in mindset is something that I think we're working on in the high school. We kind of think that, 3 credits in math has to be algebra, geometry, and algebra 2. But the state says, no, it could be algebra, geometry, and computer science, right? So just to start to think more flexibly about preparing our kids for the future, using our computer science classes to enhance our math and science classes, and not thinking of them or thinking of tech in isolation from them. So I think that's part of our journey as well. So, but I want, Mark and John to jump in on that as well.
No, I think when we started, I think you remember even when I started here in the district, we moved from what we thought were like these really heavy program courses, Java, Python, Comp Sci A, and the enrollment was super low. I mean, we had 12 kids, 10 kids, one section of computer science, and when we shifted the principles and we shifted the 2 elective courses to be more project-based and follow the inquiry cycle, when we took those programming languages, combined them, and then had a project attached to them, such as robotics, and we attached it to app design. I know Ms. Williamson and Mr. Rogers really did a lot to double the enrollment in that course within 2 years. There was an overage within robotics alone last year, and I know James has a full teaching load dedicated to what he's doing this year. So the next logical step, and I don't want to speak for Mark either, because I know this is all done in conjunction with each other, but is to grow that computer science program to the next course and to look at, you hear Dr. Callahan speak, it's very interwoven within the math and science departments. So not just looking at it as a dedicated like tech, but almost like a STEAM area. But those areas are really important because they go so hand in hand with each other.
Thank you, gentlemen. They've talked about it. You've heard it. We're talking about obviously a continuum of growing the program, and obviously these are aligned, not just the comp sci program, but the engineering and the robotics, helping our students and the parents of the community recognize the continuum of learning. So often for many of us, and I'll just kind of broadly say that, who may have graduated high school some decades ago, math and science, yes, but the STEAM reality of the world is that we want to make sure that there's a synthesis, and it's important, again, to continue to have our students pursuing a more traditional math path, a more traditionally defined math curriculum, a more traditionally defined science curriculum, and also the interdisciplinary realities of the courses that Tom and John have just talked about.
And also, it's important to realize, depending on who you ask, we're frequently talking about college and career ready, right? There's been a disparity, I think, among college admissions people, college professors, and us, functioning in the high schools. Calculus has been for a very, very long time the focus of where you want your kids to go if you want them to be competitive in their application processes in college. The interesting thing is a lot of college professors will tell you, and Mr. Farrell, I think it was Mr. Farrell sent me a recent study that suggests that might not be the best path to make people prepared for college. More and more, we're seeing that people want AP Computer Science and they want AP Statistics because they're a little bit more practical for what you might need to do in college, because not everybody is going to go and use calculus in their classes in college, but it's really, really difficult to find a class in college where you're not going to need statistics. And that doesn't matter. Your discipline doesn't matter. You're going to use statistics. Many of us, I think, who've continued on to terminal degrees in their fields could probably validate the need for statistics in their lives. So probably not so much calculus. So, just like looking at that as part of a bigger picture and preparing our kids for the future, I think is an ongoing conversation that we're always engaged in. And certainly look forward to in the coming months as we look for look at next year's offerings, but also in the coming years as we look for more support in these areas from the board.
And we have AP Computer Science.
We have AP Computer Science Principles, which is like the first course. It's like your intro to computer science course in college. When you look at Computer Science A, that's more like, it's heavier on the coding side than that initial course.
So that would be like the second.
That would be the second one.
Year, but we don't have
Mr.
that
Sabalos alluded,
right now.
when we were first looking to adopt AP for a computer course in the high school. And I think there was a combination of personnel issues and things like that that came into play. We looked to start AP Computer Science A and were not successful with it. So the students were not successful. We weren't successful in finding the right people for it. So what we decided to do is build the program from that principles course, that intro to computer science course first. Now that we have 2 full sections of that course, it might be time to now look at AP Computer Science A. I think with the right training, and I don't think I'm overstepping here because I've had these conversations with the teacher, it's something I think we could do in the near future. So that's where we'd like to go. We'd like to have the top programs, and we don't want to have we don't want to stop at AP Computer Science Principles when we know we can have AP Computer Science A. So I think that's our goal. That's where we'd like to be. And again, just giving us the ability to have a tech teacher allowed us to free up the personnel to actually offer these electives and have the appropriate training to offer that computer science principles. Now that he's there, we can I think expand the program a little bit easier.
What language do they learn in?
In
Is it
principles,
Python or?
It's Java, Python, and it's a mix of all of those, right? It's just an introduction to language, but also within the principles, if you can think of your introductory computer science, it also goes into the basics of networking, hardware, internet protocols, stuff like
okay.
that. So it's not just.
I see. Okay.
Yep. But the A course would be heavier in terms of programming language.
More program.
Yep.
And we have an AP statistics class?
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. So, and we have engineering.
Yeah, so we just added engineering last year.
And robotics, you said?
We have robotics. We have data science, which is new this year. We have some, as John pointed out, some app-based offerings in tech as well. So, when I first got here, most of these didn't exist. When John got here, we, I think, were able to move some of these programs forward by collaborating a lot with Ms. Clark at the time and now Mr. Berkowitz. So I think we've really kind of expanded these programs. Now I think we do want to start to look to take it to the next level in terms of having some of those advanced language classes.
Is anyone able to say, what if some of the students that took, I guess, the principles class, have students gone on to be engineering majors, computer science majors, or have you heard of?
So I can take this and speak to it a little bit as well. Where I've seen the most impact, and this might not surprise you, is some of our students that are a part of the research program that have gone on, right, that we do stay in contact pretty, the alumni of the research program do stay pretty well connected to us, and they do express the benefits of having knowledge of computer science in college. And the area that we do hear about it the most, or the areas, are physics and engineering. And we have some astrophysicists that have gone on and actually are in graduate studies now that have expressed that those, that basically computer languages
I think
are
I went
a
to a
necessity.
graduation party for somebody,
Right?
actually.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
those are so statistics and computing languages are becoming like something that, it's a non-negotiable in some of these upper level sciences in college.
A little bit of a shift, but I'm just wanted to make a comment that I'm so grateful for this opportunity and for this discussion, for the fact that the state has adopted these principles, the fact that our district has embraced them and is doing so much work, even though it's not yet 2024. I often reflect, on other things that have changed. We all know how to unplug because we did live a good chunk of our lives without an iPhone, right? And yet it's still very hard to unplug and disconnect, and the rate at which information is coming at us and the expectations that come with that in terms of when to respond to people and the pace of our jobs, have just moved at an exponential rate. And so I often reflect on the fact that our children now, most of our children in our school district have lived in a time when the iPhone has always existed, and so they don't know anything different. And I think this conversation about balance and unplugging is going to be a continual challenge because they don't know what necessarily what to compare it to, you know? So just kind of this overarching comment there that it's going to be an interesting next couple decades to see how that impacts as technology evolves and the demands grow.
Yeah, we had kind of discussed to think and, take an opportunity to think in terms of sort of strategic direction, support, stewardship for our budget, policy. I think we've touched on a lot of those things. And I think it was very helpful, the cell phone discussion. NISPA has a model policy on personal electronic devices, but, the things that we could talk about in the future in our policy meeting. But yeah, I think this was excellent. Does anybody else have any comments or questions?
Are you wanting to go further than just cell phone free zone classes? Are you content with that?
That's a loaded question for a high school principal.
Well, I'm just curious.
I would say that the site-based team explored this question last year, and I'm pleased with the progress we've made since last year. And I think we can and should continue to monitor the student and staff and community experience with the cell phones for all of the reasons that we've talked about, the healthy use, boundaries, awareness, decision-making.
Anybody else? No?
I just want to say that it is incredibly impressive, all of the work that each and every one of you does every single day, and the fact that you were all able to come here tonight, and the preparation work that went into both sessions tonight was beyond what anyone could have expected, and I'm personally grateful to all of you, and I know that our kids are all in excellent hands with each of you at the helm, so thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to echo that too. And I think when we planned out what topics we wanted to talk about in work session this year, this one maybe wasn't necessarily, I think, what folks may have thought was top of mind at the moment, and certainly hasn't been dominating our conversation the last couple of months, our last couple of weeks. But I think hearing all of you speak and knowing what our kids have gone through these last 2 years, this is probably one of the most important things that we can be talking about and spending time on. So I do thank you, John, for taking the lead on this, Alicia for shepherding this work. And Alicia's role was not exactly what we envisioned a couple years ago in the budget when we brought on an instructional technology specialist for elementary. But again, the necessity of the times evolved it into something that I think has probably given her a reach far beyond what we could have even expected. So thank you, John, for the vision, for Alicia for the work, and you see an incredible team of teachers and administrators there. The way Tom will not toot his own horn, but we have the way that the technology programs have grown through the high school spectrum in particular has been a collaboration, strategic use and loaning of staff to grow and innovate till we got to that point where the board this year was recommended and very happily supported that ask for an additional technology teacher. That wouldn't have come to be had there not been that advocacy, foresight, and incremental growth in the strategic program. So thank you to Tom for that leadership, and of course that was in partnership with his high school colleagues as well, and it wouldn't have happened without a strong foundation in the middle school. So everything one ties into the next to really give our kids what they need. And this whole discussion about balance, I've really enjoyed that piece because that is, I think, what we strive is as our students are prepare our kids for when they leave us. We want them to be able to know how to navigate so many things, and one of them being that real life balance for themselves. So I really appreciate those conversations. And then thanks even from the elementary grades up for everything that you all contribute every day and the way that we work together as a team. So I could not be more proud, and really appreciate all the efforts. And thank you for doing the earlier session tonight as well. I think we're going to post those materials because I know a lot of folks, too many different things to be at tonight. I think there was a lot of folks.
They're already up.
What's that?
They're already
up. Okay, I think we had folks on our fields. I think the Yankees won, so I think that took some of our crowd away too. But really, thank you for all the efforts, the time, and well done. Well done. And with that, I think we can adjourn the meeting.
Any comments? Communication from the public? Any public comment? No? Okay.
Dr. President, would you take a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Yes. Second?
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? No? Thank you very much.
Good night.
Thank you.
I often tell my